morning. There's a group of us go to the Parramatta Stadium for the home games of our football team, soccer. And there we cheer on the red and black, the team in red and black. When they come onto the field, those in another colour, sky blue, dark blue, blue and black, green and black and white, whatever colours the opposition are, they are the opposition. There's some teams we have a little bit of sympathy for, they seem decent, but others are rivals, cross-town rivals, or teams that we've had this kind of intense competition with, or teams where the team themselves conduct themselves in a way that turns us off, or their coach or players say things about our team, and they become enemies. Enemies, those who are other, are against us. And whilst, the game finishes, we all walk off together and there's a bit of banter and stuff, there's no way we would cheer for their team. It's funny how we form these tribes. For us, it's the red and the black, the Wanderers. We cheer for them and they're our team, they're our tribe, they're our colours. And we wouldn't dare wear the colours of another team. And it's not just football or sport, but it's life. We find ourselves in tribes, in groups, in communities that define themselves by who they are and exclude those who are different. We build little barriers and fences around ourselves. Sometimes it's lines of demarcation. Sometimes it's huge walls that keep people out. When people in absolute desperation get onto rusty boats and sail here uninvited, we exclude them. We lock them away in detention centres or send them overseas. We don't want them here. We're afraid, they're escaping violence and warfare and persecution in their own land. We don't want them to bring that violence here. We don't want them to take our jobs, our homes, or whatever it is. There's fear and there's judgment, and we exclude and push them away and keep them out. But we do this in lots of other ways. We judge people by the colour of their skin, or their language, or the food they eat, the clothes they wear, the life they live, their political views or their ideologies, or their faith or no faith, or type of faith, or the church they go to or don't go to. We form our own little cliques, our own little tribes, and we define who's in and who's out, and we judge those who are different. There are those in our society, people who live with mental illness or severe disabilities or chronic illnesses that impact their lives and the way they respond. And because we don't know how to relate, or we're afraid, or we're uncertain, or we just don't like them, we judge them as different and push them away and push them to the margins of life, excluding them. Those who are impoverished and poor, we hoard our resources, and as a society we don't share equally with those who need more. We exclude, we judge. And whilst much of our lives it's not hugely violent, it's these attitudes of who's in and who's out, who's right, who's wrong, who we like and who we don't, who's the opposition, can easily become the enemy. And the little attitudes we have towards people around us can grow and grow. And as a society, we can look at others who are different and exclude and abuse. I mean, we see that in our international politics, of which countries we will side with and who we're against, who is right and who is wrong. In any conflict, whose side we're on and whose side we're not on, who are the enemy. And in our world, when there's enemies and there's conflict, when people do violence to us, the response is to do more violence back. If someone uses a big weapon against us or a big army, we try and get a bigger weapon and a bigger army against them. That peace and the way forward is through more violence, stronger violence that will put them down. And yet all it does is bring about more violence and more suffering, more pain. And Jesus this week in Luke's story of Jesus continues these words from the Sermon on the Plain, Luke's version of Matthew's Sermon on the Mount. And there's some confronting words to us. Words that says, love your enemies and pray for those who hurt you. Don't condemn them, bless them. Don't judge lest you be judged, or don't condemn so you won't be condemned. Love your enemies. Do for others as you would have them do for you. And as I ponder these words, I'm confronted because too often in my own life and attitudes, like in that football, we create enemies out of others who are different. And I mean, just this week, I ran into a fellow I know on our daily walk, and we talk about soccer. His son's deeply involved in certain different clubs. And we were talking away, and he mentioned this coach of a different team who'd been the coach of one of our rivals, our cross-city rivals, and we didn't like him. He whinged and complained, and he was horrible, and but now he's moved on to another club. And this guy just innocently commented saying how well this guy's doing in his new club as a coach, and what a lovely guy. He's just so pleased that he's seeing him be a success, and he's a lovely bloke. I've known him a long time through my son. He was a great player, just a really nice person. I'm thinking, hang on, this is the enemy. This is the one we don't like. This is the one we've judged. And yet, here's someone who knows him, who I respect, who says he's a good fellow. It stopped me in my tracks. The people I will write off because they're different. They go to different politics or different churches or different faiths or whatever it might be. They're people. And in Jesus' words, it's about transformation. It's about transforming people and transforming our world. If we want a way forward that's peace-filled and where people flourish in life, it's not to judge and discriminate and push aside and build up walls. It's actually to break down those barriers and draw people together into relationship, into listening to someone's story and understanding the deeper person that's there. And every time I've sat with someone who seemed other, who seemed different, who I'm brought together with and unsure of, but listen to their story, I can't help but be drawn into relationship. And something in me changes, and I imagine something in them as well. And that's what Jesus is trying to get us to do. He's not saying, look, be soft on injustice and evil. But he's saying, don't hate the people. It's like Martin Luther King, who was heavily informed by Jesus' words and teaching in this passage, and by Gandhi, who also read the Sermon on the Mount and the Sermon on the Plain, I guess, and was influenced by Jesus' words and resisted evil, but in a non-violent way. And Martin Luther King constantly reaffirmed to the civil rights movement, those who were involved, we love our enemies. We resist the evil they do. We don't like the evil they do, and we resist it. We show it for what it is. But we don't retaliate to them with violence and more violence. And his followers, like Gandhi's, were willing to take the punishments, the violence of other people, in order to resist and stand up against what was wrong in the world. And so doing, to reveal to their opposite, to the enemies, those who consider them enemies, another way. That we are human beings and we're not going to stand for your evil. And in fact, if you give it up, you'll become more deeply human. We can work on this together as human beings. We can build a better, more peaceful, more flourishing world. His words are about transformation of communities, families, society, through the transformation of individuals. Me and you, listening to one another, and in the grace of God, hearing and reconciling and walking together into the future. It really is about forgiveness. Sorry, please forgive me. I've done the wrong thing. And then forgiving someone takes a lot of courage, a lot of humility, and sometimes it's very hard. but it's a way of being transformed, ourselves and the other. There's a story I read, a story of Tom. Tom was a rascal growing up and got into trouble and that. But as he got to high school, he became more rebellious and defiant and just disrupted classes, and all the teachers hated him. And there was complaints a mile long, and the principal was about to expel him. And then he said, look, Mrs. Warren, who was a really good English teacher and had a way with these wayward boys, he said, look, this guy's going to be expelled, but if you're willing to give him a chance, I'll give him one more chance in your class. And Mrs. Warren heard the complaints and heard the stories. He said, look, I'm willing to take him on. You can come into my class. Yep, absolutely. So he turns up, and the first day he's trying to glare at her and egg her on and disrupt a bit. But she won't have any of it. She just carries on. So he whispers a joke, a funny joke to the kid in front, who bursts out laughing and disrupts. And Mrs. Warren looks up. And she quietly just takes another chair and puts it next to her desk, and in the most beautiful, lovely, inviting way, invites Tom to come and sit up with her at her desk. And then she explains to the class that Tom's new in the class and he hasn't had a chance to catch up on the work and the homework assignment. She doesn't expect him to have done any of that. But if they would be patient with her, she would like to read the assignment for Tom so that he can help catch up. And so she sits him down and she reads from A Tale of Two Cities. And she reads with all the passion and emotion and all the feeling that Dickens puts into that story. She reads it for him. And as much as he wants to disrupt and carry on, he can't help but be drawn into the story and the feelings and what's happening and the drama. And he's touched by this teacher who will read it like this for him and wants him to enter into the story and wants to give it to him. And that night he surprises his parents by doing his homework unasked. There's been tension and fighting, and here he is doing his homework. And from that day forward, he never missed another English class. He missed other classes, but he was there every day at school, and he always had English. And then he would ask Mrs. Warren what other books he might read, he should read. And she gave him a list, and he'd read them. And then he'd sit down after school and talk with her about them, what he was learning. He was changing, and some of this had impact in other classes. He was still a bit disruptive, but his behaviour was changing. It was all going well till one day he just left. He'd had this violent argument at home with his family, and he walked out and joined the Navy. And Miss Warren was really upset. She thought she'd failed. Anyway, life went on. And then about 7 years later, after school one day, this tall young man, muscular and changed, but she looked at him and it was Tom. And he rushed over and hugged her. And she said, Tom, what are you up to? And he told her this long story about his, I've been doing education, learning courses. But you went off to the Navy. He said, yeah, but they allowed me to finish school there. And then when I did finish school, I did some other courses and training. And when I finished my time, I went and got a job and I got married and had children. But I did courses at night. And I've just finished college, and it's been great. And she said, well, what are you doing with all this education you've now got? And he said, well, I've become a teacher, an English teacher actually, and I focus on wayward boys who are disruptive and difficult and can't learn, because I remember all that you gave me and all that you did for me. I think that's the sort of transformation that Jesus is inviting us into. The transformation that's about life and grace and hope. Of not giving up on people, but not judging and condemning, but inviting them into relationship. The way of love and grace that will bring change in our world, the only way that true change can come. This is the way we're invited into. It's hard, takes courage, but it's a way of life.